As I was saying, this is Parshat Vayetze, and Parshat Vayetze is one of my favorite Torah portions. I absolutely love the story right at the beginning of Vayetze, where Isaac has died, and Rebekah says to Jacob, it's time to get out of here. Your brother Esau wants to kill you. Head back to Haran. Go to the place where I'm from and where our family is from, and there take for yourself, find a bride and make a family. Find your fortune, son. It's time to hit the road. Vayetze Yaakov. Jacob goes out from Beersheba, and what does he do? He stops in a place. He gathers the stones, and there he has a dream of a stairway going to heaven with the angels going up, angels going down. Ma norah hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place. Adonai b'makom hazeh v'ani lo yadati. God is in this place, and I didn't know it. Here is the stairway to heaven dream that Jacob has. I love that story. It's such a reminder to me that when I move through the world, am I making sure that I am working to sense God's presence or find those moments of miracles, or with angels going up and angels going down, am I looking for opportunities to bring blessing and protection to people? What is my journey and what is my quest? There is so much to teach in just that story. It's like 10 or 11 verses. But tonight, in addition to sharing that story with you, there's another story that happens a little bit later in Vayetze that has captured my mind, my imagination, my attention this week. Because there is so much brokenness in the world, and not just brokenness and bad stuff happening, but there's a lot of tikkun. There's a lot of repair to be done, whether it's racial justice or environmental justice or social justice. There is so much brokenness in our world where we as human beings are not doing a particularly good job of taking care of each other or the world around us. And it feels like we need something, some crazy solution, some plan, some program, something that gives us a patch on the tuchus or gives an idea to our brains to get us moving in the right direction, to find ways of human beings being able to live to our highest potential. And in this portion of Vayetze, there's this amazing story, this incredible story, because Jacob runs into a problem. There is Jacob. He arrives in Haran. He's introduced to Rachel and Leah, two lovely sisters. Well, Leah's kind of weak in the eyes. We don't know if that means she's ugly or she just has bad eyesight. There's something going on with the whole vision thing in Leah, but Rachel, woo, she's a good one. He is in love with Rachel, and he goes to Lavan and he says, I'd like to marry her. And he goes and he marries the woman under the veil. He lifts it up and, it's Leah. And so then he marries Rachel, and there are 14 years. It's quite the incredible part of the story. But towards the end, 20 years have passed, and Jacob is ready to come home with Rachel and Leah and the maidservants and the kids, the whole mishbucha. They're ready to come home. And Jacob is going to take some of the flocks with him because that is as his wages for all of this time that he has been here in the service of Lavan. As he gets ready to go, Lavan does something interesting. Lavan says, look, we're going to figure out what your share to take with you, but I'm going to keep all the white ones, and you can have the black sheep, and you can have the spotted and speckled goats. And Jacob's like, okay, you keep those goats and sheep, and I'll take these goats and sheep. But what Jacob doesn't realize is that, or maybe he does realize, that Lavan has gone through and taken these spotted and speckled and dark and the ones that he had assigned Jacob and moved them away so Jacob wouldn't have a chance to claim them. Now, Jacob could have just said, there's no winning this situation. There is no solution. There's no way to get out of this. Let's pack up and go, kids. But he does something interesting. Jacob, whether it's miracle, whether it's superior animal husbandry, we don't know exactly what's going on, but there's this thing with the water trays and poplar branches and all sorts of stuff, and he works his shtick. and he is able to get the spotted and speckled and dark and the sheep and goats that are meant from him through all of this incredible breeding process. And God blesses him, and he works his part of that partnership, and he is incredibly successful, and he's able to leave with an incredibly healthy and robust flock. I read that story about Jacob seeing a challenge and seeing a problem, seeing a human being not treating him with grace and kindness and compassion, and saying, you know what? I have a way to work around it. I have a way to be inspired. I have a way to solve my conundrum and do tikkun and get to the place where I need to be. And on this Shabbat, as I look out at the state of our world, do I need to be that Jacob? Do I need to find ways and inspiration in order to do it? But that whole spotted and speckled and rods and water troughs, and it's quite complicated. It's quite outlandish, and I'm really not trying, as much as I talk about the garden projects, I am not going to be having goats and sheep at Temple Beth Shalom. I draw the line somewhere. So the question always is, it's great, let's go be like Jacob. But the real question is, how do we take that story and that way of dealing with the world, and how do we make it relevant to our lives and our existence? How does this help us beyond maybe we need to have the chutzpah of Jacob in order to bring that kind of tikkun, solution, and repair to our world? In a podcast called Judaism Unbound, that's a different podcast. In a podcast called Unorthodox, which is by Tablet Magazine, Leo Leibowitz, who is one of the commentators, one of the participants in it, was told a story, a Baal Shem Tov story, in honor of Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Rabbi Sacks was the chief rabbi of the British Empire for years, for decades. He's done incredible commentaries. He's had a siddur, just an amazing scholar, an amazing teacher. And he died just a few weeks ago. May his memory be a blessing. And so Leo Leibowitz told the story as a way of honoring the way that Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks moved the world. It's an Elijah story. And so the man comes to the Baal Shem Tov, and he says, Baal Shem Tov, everybody talks about getting a chance to see Elijah. We have it at the end of Havdalah. We have it at the end of Pesach. We have it at his bris. People get these chances. I want to meet Elijah. And so the Baal Shem Tov says, fine, here's what you do. You need to put together a feast, food and drink and all of this great stuff, and I'm going to give you an address, and you go and you bring it, and you will find Elijah in that place. So the guy's like, that sounds pretty good. I can do that. I can handle that. And so he goes out and he gathers up all of the supplies, and he goes to the address, and it's a little shady, a little broken down, a little worn down, and he knocks on the door, and the door opens, and there's a young woman, and she's got kids, and they are looking at him, and he looks at them, and he says, I was told to bring this food here, and I would meet Elijah. So I'm going to come in. He comes in, he sets up the feast, and they start feasting. He's like, I wonder where Elijah is. And they're like, we're not sure, but this is amazing. Thank you for bringing it. And he waits, and they have a great feast. And he says, okay, well, I guess Elijah, I'm not sure what's going on, but you all enjoy the food. And he departs. And he goes to the Baal Shem Tov the next morning, and he says, Baal Shem Tov, I'm not sure what happened. I took the feast, just like you said. I went, they ate, but no Elijah. And he says, I'm not sure. Let's try. And so he suggests, he says, here, make it a little bit grander, and here's the address. And he goes, and of course the house is a little more run down, and it's a similar scenario. There's a woman, and there's a family, and they are hungry, and he brings in the feast, and he's waiting, and they're eating, and there's no Elijah. It's like, this is so weird. The Baal Shem Tov, he doesn't lie to people. That's the Baal Shem Tov. He told me if I do this, I will meet Elijah. So he goes the next morning, knock, knock, knock. First thing in the morning, Baal Shem Tov, why, it's good to see you. How was it? How was Elijah? I didn't meet him. I'm not sure what's going on. This doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And he says, third time's a charm, the Baal Shem Tov says. And he sets him up, feast, food and drink, and he sets him up, and he gives him the address, and he sends him back on his way, and he goes, and he knocks on the door, and there he is, and the same thing that opens up, and the family, and they're hungry, and he says, what is this? And he says, I must have the wrong address. And he walks away. Door closes, he walks away, and as he's turning away, he hears the little voice. One of the kids says, Mom, what's going on? The Baal Shem Tov said that we would open the door and there would be Elijah with our dinner for us. Food that we haven't seen anything like that in all of our lifetime. Why did he just walk away? That was so cool. It was like Elijah was standing there. And the man hears it, and he groans, and he says, oh. And he turns around, and he goes in, and he brings the feast, and realizes the power of what the Baal Shem Tov was doing, that maybe he, in bringing that food to that family and the other families, was in fact bringing Elijah into the world. That story, as I heard it, as I listened to it being told, screamed to me, spoke to me, it said, that's exactly what Jacob did. That is exactly what the Baal Shem Tov did. It's exactly what all of us need to do and need to receive. There are so many opportunities for us with our chutzpah, with our creativity, with inspiration. We have to find ways in our broken world, even as we are separated by time and space, we have to find ways to create those kinds of actions, to inspire people, to be able to set up those kinds of solutions that bring real light and love. To make, and the guy was just bringing food to those families, but what did he do? He took something that was every day, and because of the Baal Shem Tov and because of his actions, made it something transcendent. Vayetze Yaakov, Jacob goes out and he says, Adonai makom hazeh v'ani lo yadati ma norah makom hazeh. How awesome is this place? And I never really understood or never really connected the story of Jacob and the rods and the speckled and the spotted with that statement that Jacob said of how awesome is this place. God's in this place. I didn't even realize it. And yet there are those paths to those kind, and I'll say miracles, or I'll call them solutions. We have that within us. Sometimes we are the person who gets to wake somebody else up, and sometimes we need someone else to wake us up. Our world in this day and age, it needs tikkun, it needs repair. May we, on this Shabbat and this world we live in, day and age, may we be sometimes like Jacob, or the Baal Shem Tov who creates the solutions, and may we sometimes be the man. May we find opportunities to be real agents of change and appreciative, whether we initiate the change or whether we're just someone who inspires or directs or even conspires to get us into the right place to bring justice and kindness and compassion into our world. When Liel Leibowitz finished telling that story, he simply said, Selah. The word from the psalm that says, may that incredible spark of light happen in our world. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.